Hello! I have just finished watching the first season of Precure, the original series, and I wanted to make a shorter, low effort video talking about all my thoughts on it. But before then, a bit of background. I've never really been a Magical Girl fan. The first Magical Girl thing I ever fully finished was Madoka. It wasn't the first that I watched, but it was the first that I finished, which is supposed to be one of those anime that breaks down the tropes of the genre. I really enjoyed it, but part of me has always been interested in other genuine magical girl stuff like Sailor Moon, Cardcaptor Sakura, and Revolutionary Girl Utena. Utena? I think that's how you say it. I now realize, thanks to this chart, that I actually might be a closeted magical girl fan, given how many of these I've either watched or were interested in watching, both combined equaling around a third of all of these. However, one thing that I had never even heard of was Pretty Cure, which, knowing what I know now, feels surprising given how long it's been going for and how it's basically considered like the sister to franchises like Super Sentai and Kamen Rider. But yes, I'd never once heard of it until one of my best friends rediscovered her childhood love for it last year and began telling me my friends about it. Over time, I grew more and more curious about the show, but what eventually really caught my interest was, of all things, AMVs. Specifically AMVs of K-pop Demon Hunter songs done over Pretty Cure stuff, and holy shit, it made Pretty Cure look badass as hell with the fight scenes and stuff, which it is. And so my interest grew and grew, but even so, I was still hesitant, partially because I was already considering watching Sailor Moon, which I knew would be a commitment, and I don't often commit to super long anime like that. Though, to be fair, that's because most really long anime are shonen, and I don't really like shonen. My one exception is, like, My Hero Academia. I never know how to say that last word right. But that's because I'm more interested in the characters than, like, the fighting and everything. But I'd eventually discovered that this was definitely a show I was ready to commit to, as I binged the entire 49-episode season in little less than a month. After talking with my friend again, she convinced me to give Pretty Cure a shot, and boy am I glad that I did. I do still want to watch Sailor Moon eventually, but this is definitely a show I'm going to commit to and watch the entire series. All, like, 22 years of it. And as I've just finished that first series, here is my video going over all my thoughts on the show, which I'll probably do for every series from here on once I'm done with them. I apologize in advance if this video feels a bit scatterbrained, but I hope you enjoy it all the same. Also, I will be speaking as if you already know what the show is about and everything, so don't expect a breakdown of the plot beat by beat and all. First of all, wow, this show has a lot of subtly gay stuff in it. Now, I know some of the future series have a lot less subtle gay stuff in them, and one of the manga even has a canon kiss between main characters, but when I heard in the first episode that Nagisa receives a lot of love letters from girls, I knew it was going to be a fun time. Nagisa is genuinely a top 10 character of all time for me, and while she's absolutely fantastic on her own, which, just a warning, I'll likely be gushing about how adorable she is later on, her relationship with Honoka, both the actual friendship within the show and the sort of subtle romantic tension that it feels like they have, especially in one episode in particular, is absolutely fantastic and makes for a good core of the show as a whole. The two don't come off as believable friends at first, but since we're given so much screen time to develop that friendship, by the end, it feels like they were made for each other. Their support for one another is something I wish everybody got to experience in their lives. They bounce off of each other really well, they're nothing but a positive experience for each other. They trust each other probably more than almost anyone else in their life. Their synergy in combat is incredible, and my god, I mean, look at the shot where they hold hands. God, I wish they just kissed already! They're a fantastic pair of protagonists, even if the show definitely leans more towards Nagisa as the true protagonist. I'm so happy we get another season with them, and I'm gonna miss them so much when they're gone. I almost feel like this series will be a Doctor Who situation, where when the new batch of Precures show up, I'm gonna spend the first part of the series missing the old, but by the end of the series, I'm gonna wish I could spend more time with the new ones. I have a feeling that Nagisa and Honoka are gonna hurt especially hard, though. Given that most Precure teams are 3 or more, there are only 2 of them, which means they just outright receive more attention and fleshing out and individual screen time than the other groups, on top of having 2 seasons instead of just 1 like the others. So it makes sense that they'll likely be missed the most, and that even so many years and teams later, they are still the most 2 popular Precures of all time, according to a poll that my friend told me about. Speaking of Nagisa, as I mentioned, I think she probably became one of my top 10 characters of all time. She's utterly adorable, very funny, her pre-cure outfit is fucking cool, and I want to cosplay it, and her hairstyle in that outfit is great, and I just want to give her the biggest hug and tell her good luck. She's definitely more of the protagonist than Honoka, but that's not a bad thing, as she does well in that role, to the point that even if she was alone, I think she'd still be able to carry the show on her own. Her serving as the recap every episode gives this impression of her being constantly nervous and worried about all the magical girl stuff they're dealing with, which is just insanely relatable, not gonna lie. And seeing her so worried about Honoka when they're separated in episode 2 makes my heart hurt so bad, and fighting as hard as she can to free her. The one thing I do dislike about her character is the crush on Fujimura, and it's not even because of the I wish she dated Honoka thing, but because it just doesn't come up enough for me to be invested in the storyline, especially since it's left unresolved by the end of the season. I know we get a second season with them, but we don't know for sure if the creators knew they would, at least to my knowledge, so it's possible it could have just been left off on its own and left unsatisfied because they didn't have a good conclusion yet, but we'll talk more about the ending later. She also gets this moment in the start of the second half where she almost loses it because she thought everything would be over after they beat Jaku King for the first time, and how if they keep fighting, eventually they just have to lose. And that also just feels so perfect, and I wish they'd explore that more throughout the second half. Explore how much this magical girl stuff invades their lives when they're supposed to be having a normal, fun childhood. Overall, I just adore Nagisa for how unbelievably adorable she is. Again, I just want to give her a hug. Honoka, while still being a fantastic character, feels a lot more lacking than Nagisa, unfortunately. She doesn't have the family dynamic to draw on like Nagisa does. Her friends and members of the club don't get as much attention as Nagisa's friends outside of that one episode where they present the science project. And her personality doesn't feel as fleshed out, I suppose. Again, she's great, just not on the level Nagisa is, in my opinion. However, what she does have over Nagisa is her relationship with Kiria. I was so much more invested in them than I was with Nagisa and Fujimura. It felt more real, two-sided, and interesting, and that episode on the farm was so fun for both of their characters, giving more depth to one of the villains when, in all honesty, all of the rest of the Dark Five was a bit underwhelming other than Poisony. Him turning good at the end due to her was so well earned and made him far more memorable. However, I will say his appearance at the end of the season felt a bit tacked on. Like, he saves them, and that's cool, but then he doesn't really do anything else after that, and we don't get nearly enough between him and Honoka for it to feel justified. Though I found it funny when she held hands with Nagisa in front of him, like she was saying, "Yeah, I'm gay now," to her ex. I'm hoping that his sort of appearance at the very end of the season means he'll have a role in Mac's heart as well, but I'm not getting my hopes too high. Honoka is adorable too, by the way. I watched in sub, and her voice is just very precious and cute, and her smile and the expressions she makes at times is very cute. Plus, the English both she and Nagisa say for their attacks is adorable as well. Speaking of the villains, let's talk about them next. Like I mentioned, the Dark Five, in my opinion, has 2 really good characters, and then 3 that are just okay. I like that each one of them has their own separate way of fighting or gimmick. Pisard was more about letting Zakena, it's hard to, I'm not sure how to pronounce it exactly. Zakena, do the work for him. Geki Draco, I don't remember how to say these names, it's been a while since I heard them. Geki Draco was extremely physically strong and had Zakena possess living things. Poisony was more about deception and using intellect to try and fight them. Kiria was the personal slow burn with the turn at the end, and Ikubo is magically impressively strong, being the first person to outright stop the marble screw attack. Of the 3 I only find good, Ikubo is definitely the best of those 3, both because of what I said about stopping the marble screw, but also because he just straight up basically kills people a few times and almost defeats the girls, posing the biggest threat for sure, which makes sense given he's the last one before Jaku King. I also like that the villains are actually punished for constant failure, which is more than I can say for the Seeds of Darkness. As I said, Poisony was my favorite due to how she tried to trick the girls or put them in more complex situations, and that, to me, just makes things more interesting. and I was genuinely sad to see her go, which is more than I could say about most of the others. Plus, in my opinion, she has one of the funniest jokes in the series.
どこにあまさかねなわけないよねさあお土産でも見に行こうやばやばじゃん
Now, for the Dark Seeds. While they have a decent first impression, seemingly using more elemental-based attacks and fighting far more ferociously than their predecessors, they were honestly a bit lackluster. Their designs weren't as interesting, and while I enjoyed seeing them actually fight together just as often as alone, they never felt all that threatening, if I'm being honest. They couldn't even figure out Pollun had the stone powers for ages, even though it felt obvious. Their mansion is cool, even if the two Zakena butlers just kind of appearing out of nowhere is really weird. I like them, but they felt so random and pointless, just like comic relief, really. However, we don't get to see much of that mansion, mainly the dining hall and the room they use at the end, so it felt like kind of a wasted setting. Something I will give them, though, is that they all make it to almost for the very end, and do succeed. You can argue Ikubo kind of succeeds, but it's not nearly in the same vein as these three. Plus, like Kyria, they turn on Jaku King, even if it doesn't feel as satisfying as with him, and they fight against him before Nagisa and Honoka distract him and defeat him. Which is dumb, by the way. They should have fought Jaku King together first, and then the girls could have beaten their combined form. Maybe that wouldn't have worked out, but I don't know. It felt like a silly move to me. Kinda. Overall, they were serviceable, but just nowhere near as good as the Dark Five.
Merry Christmas.
As for Jaku King, I feel really mixed on him. He comes across as an intimidating threat for most of the first half, but once they actually meet him, they barely actually properly fight him, and when they defeat him, it feels like a cop-out because of Queen's help. From then on, once he comes back in the second half, he feels much less like a threat because we already know the girls can beat him. Though, at least that gets somewhat alleviated by him having the Prism Stones at the very end. That final battle is way cooler and way grander of a scale, though. Having them fight in a darkened city instead of the plain and boring Dotsuku zone was a fantastic idea. He proved himself a much stronger threat when their strongest move does absolutely nothing at first, and although you can say the end is power of friendship or whatever, I can excuse it because it looks cool and it works. Although, funnily enough, I watched the last several episodes with the friend I mentioned before, and she just kept saying she pictured Natsu from Fairy Tail showing up out of nowhere to punch him in the face because he kept sensing the power of friendship. Which was incredibly funny and amusing to me every time she said it. It's not really related, but I wanted to mention it.
なぜだ。お前たちなどにこの私がお前の奴らに託した力か。お前の最後の力なのか。クイーン、覚えておれ。
The fights. While you can say the fights are a bit silly because they always end the same way, I'm not too bothered by stuff like that. Yes, always ending the fight with either Marble Screw, the Purifying One, or Rainbow Storm is a bit annoying, but the fights leading up to those final attacks are always so good and interesting to me that I'm never really bothered by that idea. Plus, in those segments where they just throw hands, you can definitely see them slowly but sure getting stronger and stronger as time goes by. And by the end of the first season, it's pretty impressive what they're able to accomplish in terms of just outright fist-fighting. I knew at the start that they eventually go on to fight universe-ending threats in All-Stars, and I guess at the end of this season too, which I thought was hard to comprehend even like halfway through the season, and the cop-out with the first Jaku King fight didn't help. But by the end, I definitely understood how that will end up being a thing, and there's still another season with these two. Starting off the second half with them fighting through like 50 different Zakena was a really cool idea and helped push that idea that they gotten stronger, culminating in Nagisa fighting through so many of them as episode 42 all by herself just to save Honoka, which, oh, that's so sweet, she loves her. But also, wow, that's really cool. The fight choreography is really well thought out, and the fact that this is how it looks with the season that probably has the smallest budget, and seeing where it goes in later seasons has me so excited. Having a Magical Girl series where the main fighting is just these tiny girls throwing absolute hands is just fucking badass, and genuinely is part of the reason I not only gave this series a chance, but also fell for it so hard. Upgrading them with the Rainbow Storm in the second half to let them use the full power of the Prism Stones they fought so hard to get was a smart idea and a good upgrade, even if I think it doesn't look nearly as cool as Marble Screw. Though I'm glad they kept using the Marble Screw later on as well, instead of just completely abandoning it. Overall, while the ending is repetitive, I enjoy the fight scenes a lot. And as for the transformation sequence, while mostly skippable, I do like it. It feels unique with the way they almost seem to turn into steel, almost signaling the strengthening of their bodies, then followed by the appearance of their outfits. And I never skip the part where they land on the ground since I love their posing in that part.
ブラックサンダーホワイトサンダープリキュアの美しき魂が邪悪な心を打ち砕くプリキュアマーベルスクリュー
The mascot characters for the series are Mipple, Mepple, and Pollun, though Pollun doesn't appear until the second half. They feel like characters that should get really annoying, but they never did for me. Well, Pollun got annoying when he threw his fits and Mipple kept spoiling him, which he really shouldn't have. Yes, I was fooling on Mepple's side in that episode, but most of the time he wasn't that bad. Again, though, I expected the other two to annoy me at least a little, but it never really happened. Their lovey-dovey nature is adorable, their voices aren't very grating when it feels like it could be. Mepple has some really brave and cool moments, and his dynamic with Nagisa, even if a bit cliche and done before, works very well. I like seeing them slowly come to like each other a lot more as time went by, even to the point that Mepple could understand what Nagisa was saying even with her mouth full, and where they missed each other after being Jakku King the first time. By the end of the second half, they barely even argue anymore, which is really cool, and it's nice to see them having had that character development. The episode where they have to try speaking without using their ending catchphrases, calling it exhausting, was a joke that I found to be really funny, enough that I wanted to mention it here. Plus the ending where they'd rather go into an eternal sleep on Earth rather than go home because it means they'd at least get to stay by Nagisa and Honoka's sides. It's really precious and just got me just a little bit emotional. Overall, they serve as decent characters with fun dynamics with each other and the two girls. And while I hope Pollun is a little less annoying in the second season, I'm sure they're either going to stay at the same level of good or only get better at here. Though, at the same time, I can see them potentially getting worse if they aren't careful. But we'll just have to see.
プリキュアのパワーを授かったメッポプリキュアこれから二人は光の使者プリキュアとして私たちと一緒に戦うメッポ戦う勝手に決めないでほしいんだけど僕たちのお世話もするメッポこれからもよろしくメッポ
Two more things I want to discuss before we wrap everything up. First is the side characters. For a nearly 50-episode anime, they had a good amount of room to develop the side characters, and while I wouldn't say they did a bad job, I don't think they necessarily did a good one either. Now, while I am very bad at remembering names, I still feel like it should say something that the only side characters where I remember their name is Shiho, Akane, Ryota, and Fujimura. Again, not to say I don't remember the characters, I just think they didn't connect enough with me to actually remember their names. So, as I go through and describe them, I hope you'll understand who I'm referring to, even without names. Nagisa's two friends are probably the most recurring side characters, and while I did find the episode with Shiho struggling over her performance in the lacrosse match to be honestly kind of silly and frustrating, I do find both of them enjoyable all the same. Especially with the way they tease Nagisa or cheer her on, as they feel like very realistic friends. Though unfortunately, despite that, I still feel they should have had way more to their characters than they got. Perhaps I'm just not remembering, but if I don't remember, I feel like that should say enough. There's also the one girl that's strived to be constantly perfect. I looked up her name for ease, it's Yuka, who got a few appearances at the start of the season, and then a random appearance near the end that made her feel like she was going to be a bit more important than she ended up being. Perhaps that means she'll get more time in Mac's heart, but considering how sparsely she did show up, I'm not sure. Which is sad because I think she has a lot of potential as a character, so I'm gonna keep my hopes up that she shows up again. Plus, there's those two girls that dress up as the Pretty Cures and get wrapped up in everything after seeing the two fighting, and I really like that episode. Made me wish there was more stuff about people finding out about them. Which does happen, but not exactly in the way I wish it did, oftentimes with them getting knocked out or forgetting. I get why, but even so, it's annoying. Poisony using them for her schemes was also really cool, and further makes me like her, because that felt like a genuinely really dangerous situation, and I loved it. Then it comes back up later when they make the outfits for the Romeo and Juliet play, because they're shown to be good at making outfits, which is a really fun callback. Then you have the science club Honoka is in, who get like one episode, and that's it. It's sweet that they named the project after that one girl in the group, but like, that's all they get, and it's kind of sad. Nagisa's family is really enjoyable for what little we get to actually know about them, with Nagisa having an incredibly realistic relationship with her brother Ryota. It comes through in that usual dynamic of being seemingly mean on the surface, without Nagisa actually being cruel, while then showing in other moments, like the episode where Nagisa, instead of going shopping with Honoka like planned, she instead trails Ryota to make sure he doesn't get lost. And then we also get a sweet moment with them at the end. It feels like a genuine, realistic sibling relationship, even if I wish it got a little more focus at times instead of mostly being used as a joke for Nagisa to attack him. Her parents, while having less presence than Ryota, have decent characteristics as well, like us learning that Nagisa gets her weird, misused phrases from her dad, who comes off as a goofball who can't take anything seriously at first, until we get the episode where he runs off, takes a boat, and paddles himself all the way to the island just to rescue Nagisa, proving his care for her even when it seems like he's carefree. Her mother too is enjoyable, especially when she and Ryota talk about how they're worried Nagisa is talking to herself, and when she has a surprisingly adorable blush when Nagisa asked who proposed first. She doesn't have as much of a defined personality, but those little moments give her enough for me to feel satisfied. Honoka's family, on the other hand, is more interesting, or at least her grandmother is. She always seems to know what's going on, or at least has a good idea of it, but never quite reveals that to the girls. I think they've suspected a few times she knows more than she lets on, but it seems like they've never fully wondered how or why she knows. It's honestly also kept vague enough that you could write it off as a misunderstanding, but that's kind of what I like about it. It's ambiguous, but I fully believe that somehow she knows. We did see her background enough to know that Mipple spoke to her, but nothing more than that. Plus, she literally stands up to Poisony at one point, which was super cool and interesting to see, since I always found other people interacting with the bad guys to be fun, like the farm episode, and seeing her trying to keep the girls safe and basically talk down to Poisony. I kind of hope her knowledge of things gets explored a little more, but I'm doubtful. Honoka's actual parents, while they don't have much presence, are fun all the same, and I really liked them in the episode they got. Now, I feel bad Honoka doesn't get to see them, and it's kinda hard not to see them as bad parents. Mainly just being away so much. I mean, I get why, but, still. Even if they're trying their best whenever they do get to see her. Akane was a fun character, serving as someone who shows up a surprising number of times despite being outside the school and all. She's probably overheard so many things and yet never learns about anything, huh? Though, strangely enough, despite her having a decent number of appearances and having a somewhat solidified personality, she never really has much actual prevalence outside of the moment when she helps Nagisa and Honoka retrieve Pollun, and then somehow believes Honoka when she says she's the one making the voice instead of the little creature. Still, despite all this, I like getting to see her show up and interact with the girls. The principal, for as little as we get to learn about him, was enjoyable, remembering him in the water or the way he let loose on the dance floor, but the vice principal is the far stronger character of the two. He's another character that feels as though he should come across as very annoying with his demeanor and voice, but he's just so funny that I love him. His insane obsession with middle school lacrosse, the fact that he reads confiscated comic books, the fact he witnesses the magical girl stuff multiple times and even gets possessed once, his dumbass dance, his general stupidity and hilarity just tickles me a lot. He's definitely a character I look forward to seeing, even for those little small moments of comedy he comes up. Plus, him letting the girls keep their pretty cure phones was a nice moment for him that let me warm up to him a lot. The girl's teacher is also nice as well, even if, say it with me, she doesn't get a lot of attention. Her wedding episode was nice at giving her some nice little bit of characterization, and we can see just how much her class cares about her being so worried about her leaving and going through the effort of all working together to make a quote for her, one that I honestly wish I could have. Not much to say for her otherwise, so... Fujimura! What a generic character. He's literally just the mature-looking, sporty dude for Nagisa to be in love with. I loved the early drama of her being worried about him and Honoka being so close, and while I get that fades over time, especially as Nagisa comes to trust Honoka so much, some part of me wishes it was explored more since Fujimura just doesn't have very much going for him. I do see why Nagisa likes him, but I wish it had been someone more engaging and interesting, or that he showed up more often because in the second half of the plot, he just really stopped showing up very much. The stuff with him and Nagisa at the Christmas episode was cute and fun. That whole episode was fun if my earlier clip didn't indicate that. And I think there is some chemistry, but that one episode where Nagisa is torn between helping her friend and keeping Fujimura to herself, I just genuinely couldn't find it in myself to really care. I just don't like him very much, and that's even before I ship Honoka and Nagisa together, especially after episode 42. Like, seriously, Fujimura could never stand up to her true partner. And then, there's the other guy that develops a crush on Nagisa, and who basically always keeps smiling. I thought that was a fun development, and I even kind of liked them together, given the way Nagisa blushed around him too. I also really liked the joke that came from him falling for Cure Black instead, because I thought it would come up. Not only did it not, but when they did Romeo and Juliet and had to transform in front of the crowd, one of my favorite episodes, by the way, I loved the reaction from the crowd, and the comedy was very good, and the shipping between Nagisa and Honoka is so cute. That guy was literally there. He's shown later to have been in the crowd, and yet doesn't realize that it's her? At all? Just nothing? It was incredibly frustrating that they just completely dropped it altogether. Last but not least, Stonekeeper, or Wisdom. He doesn't have much of a presence in the first half, really, but then after he gets captured in the second half and has to deal with the villains and the cockatoo, he becomes super enjoyable and fun to see. He gains a lot of personality as a rather cowardly person who manages to muster up bravery when it really counts, doing his best to keep the stones safe by trusting them to Pollun, even when that's probably the worst person he could have given them to. He manages to actually escape on his own as well, which was super respectable, and helps the Cures actually survive the fight in Deltska Zone at the very end of the season, before Jaku King comes to Japan. I really liked him as a character in the second half, and although I don't think he's going to be as prevalent in Max Heart, it would be nice to see him some more. That leaves just one last thing, the music. I'd say I only skipped the intro for maybe half the episodes. Whenever I started a new session, I didn't skip for the first episode or two of that session, and that song, which is just so fucking good by the way, very quickly got stuck in my head, and I even added it to my normal playlist. It's incredibly catchy, and I often find myself humming to it without even realizing sometimes. It makes me look forward to the other intros this series has to offer, though I struggle to believe the others will be as catchy and fun as this one. But I guess we'll just have to see. As for the other music, there's this little one I want to point out because it's funny. The starting notes are the same, and that's really funny to me. I noticed the music sounded familiar, sent it to my friend, and then she pointed out the track and it just made me cackle thinking, wow, can't believe Mario Galaxy stole these notes from Pretty Cure. In all seriousness though, it's a neat coincidence and kinda makes the song stand out more, which is cool in its own way. And as for the outro, it's also very catchy, and I find myself not skipping it several times like I do with most anime I watch. But what really got me was when they use it for an episode and have the school choir sing it. And my god, when Nagisa and Honoka singing it together, they sound so beautiful and melodic together. Way better than when they sing it separately. So I'm sad they went with separately in their final go at it in the episode. Because it's just not as good and feels more thematic to have them sing it together, you know? Either way though, I always enjoy when music from the opening or outro is incorporated into the actual anime somewhere. And having it so close to the end was really fun. It made me perk up the moment I heard it. Plus, seeing the English lyrics for the first time was really cool as well. There still feels like a lot I could say, even if a lot of it is the smaller stuff like how anytime someone dances in the series it's really funny or cute, or how nostalgic the animation is, or a number of other things. But I think I've covered all the major notes I wanted to. This series blew me away with how amazing it was and how much fun I had with it. It sort of became a comfort anime, coming home after work to relax and watch some Precure, and it shows in the way I binged the entire 49 episodes in less than a month. And I'm fully confident I'm going to like the rest of the series as well, though admittedly I'm really worried about Splash Star and saying goodbye to Nagisa and Honoka and everyone else. Though I'm sure seeing them again in All Stars will make me very happy all over again, and I'm positive it'll be that Doctor Who effect where I'll grow attached to every new set that comes along. And I can't wait to explore the rest of this so far amazing franchise, especially seeing how fucking awesome the animation gets later on, and especially seeing Heartcatch, since that's apparently the best one. Regardless, I had a fun time gushing over what has become my new and now upcoming long-time obsession, and I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, I'll do this for every season of the series as well as the movies, and I hope you'll stick with me to see my thoughts on the series as I go. For now, thank you all for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to see more in the future, or become a member to see bonus videos and early videos. Love, love.